A devoted nurse sang softly to her unconscious patient every night, believing it was the only way to ease her own sorrow. What she didn't realize was that the man, silent and still, was a billionaire who could hear every note, every confession. The night was still, except for the quiet beeping of machines. In room 306 of St. Helena's Hospital, a pale man with salt and pepper hair lay motionless, tethered to monitors. Outside, the corridors were empty. Inside, 30-year-old nurse Amira Dalton, with warm brown skin, tired eyes, and a voice that once lit up local bars, sat beside the bed. Her blue scrubs clung to her after a long shift, her curly black hair pulled back loosely. She looked at him, the patient known only as Mr. Lowell. No family, no visitors, just a coma and a name. Amira whispered softly, "You don't know me, but I guess that's the point." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled sheet of lyrics. Her voice, rich and haunting, filled the room. It wasn't for show, it was for survival. Her rent was overdue, her mother was gone, and her dreams of singing had died long ago. But here in this room she could still sing, and she did, every night. What Amira didn't know, what no one knew, was that buried deep beneath the silence the man was listening. For months Dr. Elias Lowell had existed somewhere between memory and shadow. 48 years old, once a world-famous classical pianist, Elias had fallen into a coma following a tragic car crash. Grief had consumed him since losing his wife Mireille to ovarian cancer 2 years earlier. The music he once lived for had gone silent, just like his world, but there was a crack in the darkness. A sound, a voice, that voice. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, but the voice was like light breaking into a sealed room. A woman's tone, soft yet aching with something familiar, pain and resilience. He didn't know her name, but her songs made his frozen world shift like ripples in water. Sometimes he felt tears form but couldn't cry them. Sometimes he dreamed of her voice, of the warmth it carried, and in his dreams he wasn't alone anymore. Amira's life outside the hospital was anything but harmonious. After her mother's death, she had moved into a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. Bills piled up. Her guitar sat dusty in the corner. Music had once been her sanctuary. But now, the only audience she had was a man who might never wake. Still, she kept singing, every night one song. A mix of blues, soul, and the soft ballads her mother once sang in their kitchen. The hospital staff teased her. Singing to Sleeping Beauty again, one joked. But she didn't care. In those moments she felt seen, even if only by herself. She often spoke to Elias after the songs, told him about her mother's illness, her failed auditions, her fear of being invisible. "I don't know why I keep coming here," she confessed one night, brushing hair from her eyes. "Maybe because you can't judge me." She didn't know that she was wrong. He wasn't judging, he was listening, and he was beginning to feel again. Before the coma, Elias Lowell had been a recluse. His fortune, earned from composing music for films and orchestras, remained untouched after Mireille's death. He vanished from the spotlight, turning down performances, selling his piano, and disappearing into silence. He had nothing left to say. Until a rainy night when, lost in grief, he sped down the coastal highway and didn't see the truck coming. He woke in darkness, in a place where time didn't exist. His memories floated in fragments, piano keys, Mireille's laughter, a wedding ring that felt cold in his dreams. And now a new sound, a woman's voice, pulling him closer to the edge of memory. Her voice reminded him of the music he used to make. She sang with pain, with longing, with hope. Elias began to remember how it felt to create, to feel, and that terrified him. Amira read the letter twice, then a third time just to be sure it was real. Her position at St. Helena's Hospital had been eliminated due to budget cuts, effective immediately. She had worked there for 3 years, caring, cleaning, and comforting. But none of that mattered now. Her voice shook as she folded the paper and tucked it into her locker. That night she lingered in Elias's room longer than usual. Her heart felt like it was being peeled apart. "Well, Elias," she whispered, her fingers brushing the edge of the blanket near his hand, "this is it. They're letting me go." She sat down beside him, the hum of the machines the only sound. Then she began to sing. An original lullaby she once wrote in high school, one her mother had loved. Her voice cracked, but she didn't care. She poured everything into the notes, her fear, her sorrow, her exhaustion, her loneliness. When she finished, she leaned over and kissed his forehead. "Goodbye, Mr. Lowell. I hope wherever you are, you're not alone." She didn't see it, but for the first time in over a year, Elias's fingers twitched. The world returned in fragments. First came the pain, dull, throbbing, persistent, then the light stabbing into his eyes like knives, and then a soundless sob as air rushed back into his lungs, and Elias Lowell opened his eyes for the first time in 13 months. It was morning, and the room was empty. The ceiling tiles above him were unfamiliar, and his body felt like it belonged to someone else, but he was awake. The nurse on duty screamed, and soon a crowd of medical staff swarmed around him. Tests were run, calls were made, cameras followed. The mysterious billionaire had awakened, but Elias didn't care about the headlines. He cared only about one question. "Where is she?" he rasped to the head nurse. "The one who sang." They exchanged puzzled glances. "You heard the nurse singing to you." He nodded slowly, his voice weak. "She saved me." And from that moment on, Elias was no longer just a patient recovering from a coma. He was a man on a mission. Elias spent the next week rebuilding the strength in his muscles and learning how to speak clearly again. He refused interviews. He declined meetings. All he wanted was her, his nightingale, the voice that brought him back. It took some time, but eventually he learned her name. Amira Dalton, a nurse recently dismissed. No forwarding address, no current employment, just a woman who sang in the night and vanished like a ghost. Elias felt restless for the first time in years. It was as if music itself had reached out and demanded he do something. He hired a private investigator, combed through hospital logs, and listened to camera recordings that caught faint traces of her nightly performances. "She's more than a nurse," he told his assistant. "She's a healer, a singer, a soul that speaks through music." Every night, Elias sat at the grand piano in the hospital's rehab room. His fingers, rusty but eager, searched for the melody she had sung. The tune echoed in his mind like a haunting promise. He had to find her, because now it wasn't just about gratitude, it was about something deeper, something that had awakened with him. Meanwhile, Amira's world was falling apart. Jobless and behind on rent, she picked up part-time gigs as a waitress and sang on weekends at local cafes for tips. The city was loud and indifferent, and for the first time she truly felt invisible. She missed Elias more than she expected, not just him, but the quiet comfort of being heard, even if he couldn't respond. Her songs had meant something there. Now they were drowned out by espresso machines and chattering patrons. But one night something shifted. A music producer, sipping black coffee in the corner, approached her after a set. "You've got something rare," he said. A raw voice, like pain wrapped in velvet. Amira laughed, thinking it was a joke. But he gave her his card anyway. "Call me. I'm not offering a record deal yet, but I want to see what you can do in a studio." She stared at the card long after he left. For the first time in weeks, the fire inside her flickered to life again. The morning news was ablaze with the story. Reclusive billionaire pianist awakens after year-long coma. Elias Lowell, genius composer and music mogul, was alive and conscious. Reporters crowded his home and the hospital, eager for a quote. But the press conference he gave shocked everyone. "I owe my life to a woman named Amira Dalton," he said into the microphone. "She doesn't know it, but her voice healed something in me that medicine never could. If anyone knows where she is, please tell her I'm looking." Within 24 hours, the clip had gone viral. Amira, who had just finished her second shift waiting tables, saw the video on her friend's phone. Her heart stopped. He remembers. Tears spilled down her cheeks. For a moment she just sat in stunned silence. Then something incredible happened. She smiled. It was a week later when Amira walked into the city's largest concert hall, invited under mysterious circumstances. The space was empty, save for one man at the grand piano. Elias turned, his eyes locking with hers. He looked thinner, older, but very much alive. "I knew you'd come," he said softly. Amira didn't know whether to cry or laugh. "You remember everything, every note, every word, every night." There were no more words, just a long, silent hug, the kind that dissolves months of unspoken emotion. When they finally let go, Elias said, "You saved my life, let me help you find yours." True to his word, Elias brought Amira to a studio the following week. She was nervous, unsure, but he guided her gently. He had been a mentor before, but never like this. This time it was personal. They began recording demos together. He played, she sang. It was raw and imperfect at first, but gradually something extraordinary began to form, a sound born of loss and healing. Amira found herself again, not as a background nurse or forgotten dreamer, but as an artist. Elias watched her grow, not just in voice but in confidence, and through her he began to heal too. Together they built something neither could have imagined. Their first public performance came at a charity gala hosted by Elias's foundation. The venue was packed. Industry professionals, philanthropists, and media all gathered, unaware of the miracle about to unfold. Elias introduced Amira with a quiet pride in his voice. She stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding. The lights dimmed. She closed her eyes and sang. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. The moment marked her arrival, not just as a singer but as someone who had defied the odds. And Elias, he saw his future in her. The days that followed their performance were a whirlwind of meetings, praise, and press interviews. But in the quiet moments, away from the lights and applause, something else was growing. Something unspoken between Amira and Elias. They worked closely, often into the late hours. She would laugh at his old stories about performing for royalty. He'd tease her about her stubborn perfectionism in the studio. Yet beneath the smiles, they both felt it. The magnetic pull that had started long ago in that silent hospital room. Amira would often catch Elias watching her while she rehearsed, not just with admiration, but with something softer, more personal. She told herself it was just gratitude. He told himself it was just inspiration. But when their hands brushed while tuning a microphone, neither of them pulled away. One night after rehearsal, Amira found Elias sitting alone at the piano playing the tune she used to sing in his hospital room. He looked up, surprised but not startled. "I can't get your melody out of my head," he said, his voice low. "It's yours now," she smiled. "You gave it life." He paused, then closed the piano lid gently. "Amira, I didn't just wake up because of your voice. I woke up because of you." She looked down, nervous. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." He stood and stepped closer. "I just needed you to know that when the music returned, so did my heart." Tears brimmed in her eyes. The room felt still, sacred, like that hospital room once had. She didn't say anything, but in that silence her eyes said everything he needed to hear. Just when it seemed like things were finally right, the past came knocking. A journalist uncovered the story of Elias's late wife and printed a dramatic headline. "Billionaire finds new muse after tragic loss." Too soon? Amira was hurt. Not by Elias, but by the assumptions. Was she just a replacement, a passing phase? She pulled away, unsure. Elias, noticing the change, confronted her. "Amira, she'll always be a part of my story, but you're the chapter I never thought I'd live to write. But what if I'm just filling her silence?" "You're not filling it. You're writing something new over it. It wasn't perfect, but real love never is," and in time her heart began to trust again. With Elias's help, but not his influence, Amira released her first single under a small label. It was the lullaby she had sung on her last night as a nurse. Raw, honest, haunting. The song went viral. People resonated with the pain and beauty in her voice. Overnight, Amira became a symbol of hope, a woman who kept singing even when no one was listening. She was invited to perform on morning shows, podcasts, and even national radio. But through it all, she stayed grounded, because to her, the greatest reward wasn't fame. It was knowing that one soul had heard her and returned because of it. Months later, Elias's foundation planned a special gala to fund music therapy for hospitals. He asked Amira to perform again, this time with a full orchestra. She agreed, unaware he had something else planned. That night, the venue sparkled with lights and expectation. Amira wore a deep blue gown that shimmered as she walked onto the stage. Elias sat at the piano, calm but resolute. Together, they performed the song that had once only existed in the dark. The crowd was breathless, and when the final note faded, Elias stood up, turned to her, and took her hand. "In front of everyone," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "I want to thank you for saving my life, and now I want to ask you to share it with me." Then he knelt. "Amira Dalton, will you marry me?" For a moment, the entire room held its breath. Amira looked at Elias, her heart pounding. The spotlight above them softened into a warm glow. She had once sung to a man she thought would never wake up. Now he was awake and on one knee. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Yes, yes, Elias." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. But all Amira saw was the man before her, broken once, healed now, and offering her forever. They embraced as musicians behind them resumed playing, this time to a different rhythm, the heartbeat of two people finally in sync. Their wedding was small, surrounded by friends, musicians, and hospital staff who had once called her the singing nurse. She walked down the aisle to the very tune she used to sing in Elias's hospital room. Only this time it was Elias playing. After the vows, they surprised everyone by performing a duet together, an original love ballad they wrote during late-night studio sessions. Their love wasn't flashy, it wasn't a fairy tale, it was earned. Through pain, patience, and music. As the guests danced, Amira whispered in Elias's ear, "You gave me more than love. You gave me my voice." He kissed her cheek. "You gave me life." Years later, their story continued to inspire. Amira founded a non-profit that brought music therapy to underserved hospitals. Elias returned to composing, this time with Amira as his muse, his partner and co-writer. They traveled the world performing together, but their favorite place remained the quiet corners of hospital wards, where Amira would sing to patients just as she once did to him. Their song, a lullaby born in sorrow, became a global anthem for healing, and though the spotlight eventually dimmed, the love it had revealed remained as bright as ever. In the end, it wasn't just about waking up from a coma. It was about waking up to love, to purpose, to the quiet miracles found in unexpected places. If you believe in the healing power of love and music, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories.